All right. We are going live. What's up, everybody? How is it going? It is Thursday night, May the 19th, 2022. Welcome back to Hooksets Are Free. My name is Tyler, and hope you guys are doing well, whether it is live that you're in here watching this with me or on the replay, perhaps. Uh, hope everything is going well on your end. So it looks like I might have same chat issue as last time. No, Daniel shows up. What's up, Daniel? What's up, Adam? How you guys doing tonight? Good to see you guys in here. And good to see that my chat feature is actually working tonight. So that's pretty sweet. I don't know how long this live stream is going to be tonight. We will have to see about that. My Colorado Avalanche are playing right now and are not playing their best hockey, unfortunately. So I have been heavily invested in that, but decided that I would probably not have an opportunity to be on tomorrow or perhaps this weekend either. So I'm on here tonight and wishing my Avs well in the third period. Um, yeah, it's a home game tonight, so gonna need to get her done. So I've got one new bait here that I want to show you guys in a minute that came from my tackle warehouse package. But let's give people just a couple of moments to get in here. What's up, Matt? How are you doing? Losing big fish. I feel like you've told me before, but I forget what your first name is. Remind me again, and hopefully I will. I'll remember for the future. I am, and I'm also not ready for it to snow, guys. We're supposed to get, I don't know, 6 to 10 inches of snow here between tomorrow and Saturday. It's going to be absolutely bonkers. Temperatures were in the 80s yesterday and today, and tomorrow it's going to be in the 40s, and we're going to see lows in the 20s for the next 3 nights. Uh, just crazy. I'll show you the weather report real quick. Look at that. Low of 30, low of 27, low of 26. Like, ew. We're going to get snow tomorrow, snow on Saturday, and then, back half of next week, it's going to warm back up, and we'll get back into the 70s and 80s. But we're going to have quite the, say, cold snap and cold front come through here. So, going to be kind of brutal. But yeah, Chris, it could be a little bit different in my part of town than in yours. I'm on the south side, but yeah, it's going to be snow. I'm not all that jazzed about it, if we're being honest. So, Chris does not lose a lot of big fish. Okay. Wow, Matt says it's going to be 98 degrees in Jersey on Saturday. That's wild. I thought it was crazy being 85 here today. And I will say the super warm temperatures have been really good for my fishing. I've been out 3 times this week, and I've had productive sessions every time. I've not gone out for a long period of time anytime, but yeah, we'll talk about those 3 sessions here in a moment or two. I have been somewhat not strategic in picking out the baits to take with me. So I've just kind of winged it and gone along with what I've had on me. And I will say, given the warm temperatures and the fish moving up shallow, combined with a lot of weed growth as of late, I have moved to fishing soft plastics a lot more than I would have thought for this time. I would think that really for most of the month of May that the water temps would be in the 50s and gradually climbing, and that I'd be able to throw a much more wide variety of presentations at them. And I planned to fish a lot more crankbaits, chatterbaits, swim jigs, and then kind of dabbling with top waters and such. But I have seen a lot of fish up in the shallows, and they've been somewhat spooky. But depending on the situation, I've been able to pick them off. So yeah, pretty good deal. We've got 5 people in here, just 2 thumbs up that I can see right now. Do me a quick favor, hit that thumbs up button. I don't know if YouTube is pushing this out to people or not, but um, if we don't get a big crowd and we do kind of plow through some of this information and the chat is not flying, then I might hop out of here, after 45 minutes or something and try to go watch the end of the game. But if everything's going well, people kind of make their way in here and we're having a good time, then by all means, I am willing to stay as long as you guys are. And we always have a good time in here. So Adam says, today I was pretty successful with a 4-inch Zoom lizard. Yeah, I really like that 4-inch lizard. I don't fish it year round. It's pretty much like now until, uh, you know, end of June for me. Kind of that like late pre-spawn through the spawn and into early pre-spawn before the summer really kicks in. When the fish are up shallow. That's kind of what I do. Scott Large in the house, watching from Melbourne, Australia. That's sweet, man. What time is it there right now? Is it middle of the day or afternoon or something? That's pretty cool. Yeah, we don't get a lot of people in here that are watching from all the way around the world. My parents are actually, um, I think, in the Czech Republic right now. They're on a little bit of a European vacation for the next month, which will be pretty cool. Okay, 1:30 p.m. Got it. Yeah, it's 9:30 p.m. here the day before, the 19th here in Colorado, and it's 11:30 p.m. for the guys that are on the East Coast of the U.S. here. But thank you for joining us, Scott. I appreciate that. Are you a subscriber to the channel, or how did you stumble into my content and this live stream? Because that's pretty cool. Chris says, up toward the end of my bass, just got done spawning. Uh, so are you saying most of your bass just got done spawning, or what? I feel like I have noticed some fish are done spawning at this point, but most have not spawned. I have not seen any visible beds at any of the bodies of water that I've been to. I've just noticed fish in really sneaky spots under docks and way back up in creeks and such, uh, where they've been able to kind of get away. And I'm sure that there's a lot of bass that are spawning in cattails and reeds and other places that I wouldn't be able to spot beds, but where I ordinarily see beds, I have not seen them this year so far. So I wonder if your waters are just a little bit warmer than mine. And if you're seeing any beds either, Chris, you tell me. Scott says he's a subscriber, and that is rad. I appreciate it, Scott. Daniel says Sunday I was cranking and they were hitting it like they hated it. Every fish took both trebles. Nice. That's pretty sick. What kind of crankbaits were you using, Daniel? Matt says he's feeling the burn from losing that fish, but I guess today kind of made up for it. Saw another big fish today. Wouldn't bite anything. Did you tell me about losing a big fish? I feel like I should know what you're talking about, but I'm not 100% sure. Adam says, right now, downsizing everything, participating in a tournament for dinks, can only submit fish 10 inches or less. That's hilarious. A dink tournament. Okay, guys, I've got a bait in here that, I had ordered a package from Tackle Warehouse that came in last week. I unboxed it on my live stream last week, and in it was everything but one of the lures that I purchased, and it came in the other day. So I took it out of the box to just take a peek at it, and it's in its package right now. I'm going to show it to you right now. Let me know what you think of this bait. Matt has talked to me about it before, but I don't think he has one himself. This is the 13 Fishing Coalition Baits collaboration, but these are the new wedge tail series of swim baits that they're making. So you guys know that I'm a fan of I don't know where the pack of them are sitting right now, but this guy right here is the 13 Fishing Coalition Baits Bamf Shad. Okay, quality swim bait, deep belly hook slot, and made to be fished weedless. These are high quality baits. This is a 5¼ inch size. They come 2 to a pack. I really like these baits, and the shad is really the only one that I had, but they released both the shad and the bluegill in this wedge tail design earlier this year, and it caught my attention, and so I decided to pick one up. They are a little bit more expensive than the originals because of the wedge tail. So these just come 1 to a pack and are like, I don't, $15 for the one swim bait. So not exactly a cheap bait, but also not crazy expensive in the grand scheme of things. So this color here is called Natural Bluegill, and it's also that 5¼ inch size, and it weighs 1.5 ounces, 1 16/25 of an ounce. That's a weird way to put it, putting it in fractions like that, but about 1.5 ounces by itself. So that wedge tail is heavy. Take a look at that thing. Very dramatic tail that's going to create a very lifelike swim in the water. And the paint job, the finish on this thing is tremendous. You know, you got some blue, some chartreuse, some orange, and then like a natural bluegill pattern with that striping on it. Okay, so the top of the bait has a place for the hook to come out, and the belly, just like I showed you in the Bamf Shad, is molded so that it's very deep. It says on the package that this is meant for an 8/0. They say a BMC hook, but really, you know, when I think of a swim bait hook, I'm thinking Owner Beast. So I've got an 8/0 Owner Beast here, and just to show kind of how it lines up, this is essentially what we're working with. Although, as I take a peek at that, I wonder if that's going to come out in the right spot or not. But I suppose we ought to give it a try, right? And if need be, I will use my trusty little itty bitty mend it, and this could be the one application where I use it. Daniel says he was using the Crush Flat 75X in the Ghost Threadfin Shad. Nice. Good bait. Oh, okay, Matt. Yeah, you're right. Matt got a treble hook stuck in his neck the other day, past the barb, but fortunately was able to push it through the skin and pinch the barb and get it back out and resume fishing. So glad to hear that it did not turn into quite the emergency for you that my hooking myself did last summer. But yeah, sorry about that, man. And Chris says the smaller Clearwater ponds near my house, they just got done spawning last weekend. Water temp is 65 there. Okay. I mean, that makes sense water temperature wise. I was just wondering if you had seen any bass spawning locked onto beds and so forth. You said Stanley Lake is only at 58 degrees. It might be another week or two before the bass start spawning there. Makes sense. Matt says definitely got to give us a review because it looks good. Yeah, I think this bait looks good too. Uh, I'm very excited to give it a try, especially in the areas where I know that bass primarily feed on bluegill. A 5-inch bluegill is a little bit larger than a true snack size bluegill, but I do still think that um, bass 3 pounds and up will have no problem engulfing a bait of this size. So, did I see Riley in here? Riley, yo yo, thank you very much. Not only for showing up, but for the well wishes. Yeah, the family and I are in fact doing well. So thank you very much. Hope all is well on your end. Uh, when does school end for you, Riley? And was this year your junior year, or remind me real quick? So I'm going to screw this screw lock in about as far as I can into the nose, and I hope I've got that angle right. We're going to give this a whirl. So when I bury the hook in the bait, it looks like this, but it's going to go even further in. Whoa, interesting. There's a hole. Wow, that makes for easy rigging. So the hook is out now, but I did not have to pierce and damage any soft plastic, which is freaking awesome. Uh, so you can see that weight is buried in there, and the hook is sitting right on top in that slot. So this is perfectly designed around this hook. Now, let me show you, because it's not going to do any damage for me to back it out. If I can show you, right back there, it's actually open. So here it's solid plastic, but in the back of this fin slot, it's open into the bait. So when I shove this hook up into the bait and then try to find a spot, and I actually split this gill section, I can see the point of the hook. And so it's almost just like texposing a bait, where you pinch it forward and bring that hook up through that hole, and voila, she's sitting on top. That is a very cool design. Uh, I had no idea that it was made like that, so I like that a lot. Um, how cool is that? Sick looking bait, and one that I definitely look forward to using. So with the weight that's on the hook, this bait is probably a little bit less than 2 ounces fully rigged. And something that I will still probably throw on my Dobbin 795 uh, rod for swim baits, but you probably could get away with throwing this on just a frogging or flipping stick, especially because you're going to need to swing to get them. But with the fact that that hole is there and this hook just rests on top perfectly, you really don't have to do a lot to get that hook to pop up. And I like that quite a lot. I feel like the hookup ratio on this bait is going to be very good. I'm just curious to see how much that hook potentially comes free and slides up out of the bait, and the weedlessness is not as much of a thing. If you might need to actually texpose it occasionally. But for now, first impressions are very good. Next order of business is getting this thing out on the water, seeing how it swims, and seeing how fish like eating it. The other thing to note about these baits that 13 Fishing does, and they do it with the other ones as well, the Bamf Shad, and is they include these anchors. Okay, so I'll go ahead and just demonstrate for you how these things work. They include 4 in the package, but really the design is to use 2 of them. So technically you've got 2 spares as well. And these are plastic anchors. So what you're going to do, and it just looks like a little nail weight. These are pointy on the tip. So you cross through the CPS spring and into the nose of the bait. I don't know if I'm even doing this right. I don't want it to deform the shape of the bait, but it kind of almost wants to a little bit. So essentially you're supposed to make a crisscross pattern where effectively you are going through the centering pin spring that you have already anchored into the nose of the bait. So here you can see that I've got the crisscross. These plastic anchors are going in at an angle to help keep this centering pin from pulling out, ripping out of the nose of the bait. So just helps reinforce that thing just a little bit more. And I don't think it's a bad idea at all. Cam says that's the same as the Bamf Shad. What do you mean it's the same? In the Bamf Shad, it does not have that hole in the top of the bait, at least in the original version with this tail. At least not that I noticed. Of course, both of the ones that I have, I've already like completely tore up. So I know I have another pack of them somewhere. I thought I had them up on the wall, but I would need to look into that to verify whether or not that's the case. And my desk is such a mess that I'm going to need to find them another time. I don't want to make more of a mess than is necessary at the moment. But Matt says, that's interesting, Tyler. I didn't know that. Pretty smart, actually. Yeah, it is. Frank in the house. What's up, dude? Trying to sneak in a live stream without me. Not exactly. I just didn't take the time to DM everybody on Instagram like I normally do and let you guys know that I was going live tonight. So I apologize for that. You know, we're 20 minutes in, and really all I've done is unbox this bait and rig it up for you guys. This is a bait that was in my tackle warehouse package from last week that did not come in the package. It came from the other warehouse from Tackle Warehouse. So, yeah. Cam says good hookups, but after a fish or two, you can have to mend it to shut the top again. Okay. Yeah, fair enough. But I'm telling you, I think there's a different design with this guy. The top behind this fin is not sealed. It's like on top where there's the ridge. It is sealed, of course, but then right back here where the hook is actually coming up and out, it's open. You do not have to pierce any plastic in order to rig this bait. So, very interesting. I'm not sure if I'm going to have to use Mend It or not. I thought I was going to have to use Mend It if I screwed up the rigging of this thing before even knowing that it was designed like that. I thought if the hook didn't fit right, and I'm tearing it up, if I didn't put the screw lock in right and I needed to redo it, that I might have to use some Mend It uh, to kind of reseal it. But yeah. Riley says, also sorry for missing streams. Uh, that's okay, Riley. Fishing, rifle, and powerlifting on top of work keep me busy, but I watch them the day after, and your last stream helps me land a 9-pound bass on a tournament. So thank you. What? Um, that's unbelievable, Riley. You caught a 9-pounder. Congratulations. Is that your PB or what? And how did my advice help you in landing a 9-pounder? Because that is insane and makes me feel real good. But I don't know how I'm at all responsible for that. So fill us in on what the story is about that 9-pounder. Adam says, "Have you ever used the Z-Man boar hogs? Any thoughts?" I have, and I wonder if I've got a pack or two sitting up here because I have a few packs of them. Got some in black and blue and some in mud bug, and I like them. I for some reason I I originally these up and did not use them um for like a whole season, and then last year I fished them a handful of times, and I did catch some fish on them. I like this bait, but here's a couple things to note about it: is that it's got a relatively slender body. Uh, this is a skinny profile. It's not nearly as wide as a lot of other creature baits on the market. And so that kind of turned me off from it, just thinking about how to best use it. But ultimately, I realized that it does just fine on a wobblehead, on a Texas rig, on a Carolina rig, anything like that, where really you're fishing along the bottom. It can work as a flipping bait, but I like something with a little bit more meat on it if I'm trying to bury a hook inside a plastic. But if you're going to come through and then expose the bait, I think it's good like that. But it performs really well on a swimming or pulling style retrieve, where when you're sweeping the rod, these are really thin kickers that act like a double tail grub. So you get a little bit longer profile. What is this? A four? They say it's a 4-inch bait, but um, yeah, I think it could also make a great jig trailer if you cut down, a half inch or so off of the nose and then just threaded it up onto a jig. So um, it definitely gets my stamp of approval. I like it. I think it has a little bit more action on a slower retrieve than say the Turbo Craws, which is like an ultra vibe speed craw, and I think it has a lot better action than like the Z-Man Hella Craws does, and would probably make a better jig trailer than that. So those are kind of my initial 2 cents on the boar hogs. I don't think it gets a lot of attention, and for no particular reason. I'm really not sure of that, but it's a good bait. Adam says, what size hook do you recommend for a Texas rig? Yeah, I think a 3/0 or a 4/0. I would probably use a 4/0 and usually do when Texas rigging 4-inch baits, but you could get away with a 3/0, no problem. Riley says, well, my PB is a 10-4, and I caught that 9 on the Shimano Flash Boost that you talked about on your unboxing. And I thought, let's give it a try. So I bought it, took the tips that you talked about, and bam, no way. Were you using the jerkbait or the popper? Were you using this guy right here? Or were you using the World Minnow? That is awesome. Congratulations again, Riley. A 9-pounder in a tournament. I don't care where you are. That's sick. Okay, so you're using the World Minnow jerkbait. That is sweet. Man, I can't get over that. I am super jealous. I've only fished that bait once or twice, but on relatively unproductive days where I was just kind of rifling through baits. So I was wanting to just see how that thing acted in the water. And I first impressions are good. I like that bait. But that gives me a little boost of confidence knowing that you personally caught a 9-pounder on that Shimano World Minnow. Awesome. So let's talk about the three outings that I had this week because I don't know. I might be able to drag my 4-year-old and my 1-year-old out to go fishing for a little bit tomorrow, but I won't be able to stay out and stay as laser focused or as quiet, really be as effective on the water as I would like to be. But I do truly think that like this is the time to be out on the water as much as you can before true summer conditions hit. And you really have to be more strategic about getting out early and getting out late and not doing as much fishing in the middle of the day. But right now, conditions are so good that I feel like you can catch them all through the day, and fish are active and either feeding up in pre spawn or they're recouping after the spawn and they haven't yet moved out deep. So, regardless of what phase you're in relative to the spawn, most people's fish are not going to be back out deep for at least another few weeks, if not a month. For me, probably not another 6 weeks. Uh, so, I've got really the next 3 or 4 weeks to play around with sight fishing in clearer water. Things have really come around in the last month where water temps have climbed kind of dramatically as we've had some warmer weather here, and the water clarity has gotten a lot better in pretty much every body of water that I have fished. And so uh, fishing has gotten really good, and there's nothing wrong with that. So I wish that Ron Holly, Bassless Chap, was in here right now to contribute so that we could see if he's been catching any fish, if he is no longer bassless, because I feel like he needs to get out and do some fishing because now is the time, as I just said. Bruce says 100 degrees here tomorrow. I'll be hiding in the AC somewhere. Um, yeah, in a way, I'm jealous, but only because tomorrow we're gonna have a high of 49 degrees and a low of 29, and it's gonna be snowing. Um, it's gonna be raining from 9 a.m. until 3 p.m. and snowing from 4 p.m. on through Saturday. And yeah, I'm in for some cold weather. High on Saturday of 38 degrees, if you can believe that. Um, just kind of blows my mind. So let me pull up some of these photos to just kind of, um, rack my brain and try to remember how I caught these fish because it has varied a lot over the last week. But when I went out on Monday, I went out to a small pond here Uh, well, it's a small pond, maybe 5 acres or so, and I caught like a, I don't know, 6 or 7 inch pumpkin seed on a drop shot, and I was using the Berkeley Maxent D worm. So I was targeting bass, but some bluegill decided to eat it, and that was a pretty sweet big panfish. And I usually catch bluegill a lot more than I do pumpkin seed, but that was kind of a fun fish to catch. On that same day, I caught a couple of bass um, on that same bait. The Maxent D worm, just a little guy, fish a little bit better, maybe a 2 pounder, and then caught one on the Z-Man finesse shads, about another 2 pounder or so, maybe a little bit less than that. And so I think I caught 4 or 5 fish that day, and was only out for, that was a period of 30 minutes that I caught all of those fish in pretty quick order. So I think I was only out for like an hour and a half. And then yesterday I went out and just whacked on them. I'd been going to a body of water that's really close to my house uh, somewhat frequently, but I haven't been there in like a week and a half. I went yesterday, saw that the water was really clear. So I decided to go around the back side of the pond where lake rather. Um, and it is quite a bit more shallow. It's a creek fed lake. And so I went to where the creek feeds in to the lake as opposed to the opposite side that I normally fish, where there's a riprap bank, kind of the dam part of the lake. And so um, I went to where the creek feeds in, and all of a sudden I noticed that it was loaded with fish. Like they were going up in the creek into, you know, 2 or 3 inches of water. And so I could tell that the warm weather over the past week or so, including yesterday being rather hot, had pushed all these fish up really shallow. And so I just found kind of a honey hole and managed to catch like 20 or 25 fish in 2.5 hours. So between 12 o'clock noon and 2:30 p.m., I caught a handful of crappie, a handful of bluegill, black and white crappie. Uh, some of these bluegill are like textbook looking. Um, really good looking fish. And caught a whole bunch of bass, all mostly ranging in the like pound and a half to 2.5 pound range. Um, I didn't catch a lot of really small bass, which was cool, but I mixed up my presentations in targeting these fish. And so when I was targeting crappie, uh, I was throwing like crappie baits. I was throwing like a Bobby Garland, a little like 2 inch minnow type of deal on a drop shot on a smaller hook. Bruce Nichols, dog has to go out, no problem. Uh, then I was switching up, and when targeting some of these bass, same exact deal as earlier in the week. These bluegill were eating um, the Maxent D worm. And so then when I'd notice that I'd spook all the bass away, then I'd switch up and go to something a little bit more, panfish friendly. And so here I'm using just a small chunk of it. It's a lot like the Maxent D worm, but it's a power bait. Uh, what do they call it? The money. It's the Skeet Reese power bait. Dang it! This is gonna kill me. Um, What is it called? Straight money. Straight money. Okay. So yeah, the straight money is a pretty cool bait because it has just a tapered tail. It's pretty much like a swamp crawler type of bait, very narrow in profile, but it's like a 5.5 inch long worm, and it's got this thinned out flat tail on the back. So cutting that thing down to like an inch and a half or 2 inches and threading it onto a smaller hook is absolutely deadly for panfish. But I was drop shotting a fair amount uh, and catching bass on the max scent D worm, catching them on, geez, I caught a million fish on the Ned rig. Uh, Caught some on the max scent flatworm in that new bigger size, the 4.25. I even downsized when going for crappie a couple times and threw the mule fishing um, horsefly, which is a pretty sweet bait, and managed to catch like a 2 pound bass on it. And that was sweet, as well as a couple panfish on it. But here's that Bobby Garland little bait there in the mouth of that white crappie. Um, Here's a max end D worm cut down to like a 3 inch size, thrown on a wacky rig on a drop shot. Bluegill eating the crappie bait, that Bobby Garland. Um, that was actually a really cool colored bluegill. I wanted to try and capture some of its colors. It had a lot of like iridescence to it, some purples and greens and other colors that showed through that I did not expect. Um, Smallest bass that I caught of the day came on a jig. This is that Z-Man Power Finesse cross-eyes jig. And then I caught maybe 10 or so bass on a Ned rig. So specifically the Molix Flex Stick. Um, oh, here's a tiny little guy on the Molix Flex Stick. That was probably my smallest fish of the day. But I caught some pretty good ones on it as well. And they were wolfing it for the most part. There were a couple that just got pinned straight in the roof of the mouth. So, I was catching the snot out of them. Caught like 20 or 25 fish, maybe more than that. You know, um, in just a couple hour period yesterday, and that was awesome. Um, Whereas today I was on dad duty, dropped both my girls off at school, and then had about 2 hours of time with my son, where ordinarily we'd go home and play here at the house and goof around for a little while before picking up my daughter, my 4 year old, up from preschool before lunch. And instead, I took him out fishing today and caught a 2.7, I think she weighed, uh, on the Ned rig. Same exact deal. That Molix Flex Stick down the hatch. Uh, I'm pretty sure she was bedding underneath a dock that I was fishing from. You know, she was definitely hanging out under the dock. I could see her there, and she would spook when I would skip up under there. Of course, I'm up on the dock, maybe 6 feet above her, and I'm flinging down there. And it took me a while to actually like get it right because I was trying to skip and a drop shot under there at first because that's what I had rigged up. Uh, kind of messed around with a few different presentations before the Ned rig finally got her done and made her bite. And the funny thing is, there was a kid already fishing on that dock when I got there, and I was just chatting it up with him and giving him a little bit of advice. He said he had been out for like 3 or 4 hours that morning, only caught one small bass. And then in, I don't know, 20 minutes after being there, I caught that fish and he was kind of freaking out. I could tell he was a little bit jealous and just curious. So I gave him quite a bit of advice and then gave him a bunch of soft plastic baits. And so uh, he was curious. He didn't have the right hooks or jig heads or weights or anything. So I gave him a handful of drop shot weights and hooks and showed him how to tie a Palomar knot and rig up a drop shot. And he was playing around with a few of the different baits, that max scent D worm, the max scent hit flatworm, and a robo worm, 4.5 inch uh, straight tail fat. And funny enough, I made a comment that that fish went right back on to her bed, or presumably onto the bed, because I saw her back on that same spot. I could not see a physical bed because it's rocks under this dock, but the fish was back there, and all of a sudden he became obsessed, wanting to target that same fish. And I didn't say anything, but in my mind, I'm thinking, dude, the odds that you're going to catch that same fish, especially right away after I just caught it, are like, next to none. And so I'm fishing. I caught a crappie uh, off of that dock that I could barely see, hunkered down on the bottom, just hanging out on like just a lone clump of leaves or a darker patch of grass. And it was like almost camouflage, but kind of an interesting place for a crappie, especially a lone crappie, to be hanging out when ordinarily they are definitely in the shadows, under branches, trees, things like that, where they are definitely more protected. Um, and so I was able to snipe that fish. And then as my son was getting a little bit fussy before we left, uh, this kid actually hooked up with the same fish by doing what I had been doing and using the rig and the baits that I'd given him. Caught the same fish probably 30 to 45 minutes after I had caught it. And he was pumped and he was also grateful. So that was all a very exciting, cool experience to not only catch that fish in the first place, but then have uh, somebody else catch the same fish after having learned a couple of things from me. So that was pretty thrilling, I'll say. And yeah, so this week has been a productive one for me. You know, 4 fish, call it 20 or 25 fish, and then today 2 fish. I think it was two. Uh, could have been three, but yeah. Um, Good week so far. I feel like the fish are biting, the water clarity is good, and the water temps are high. But of course, this snowstorm is going to screw all of that up for me here in Colorado. And so I have no idea what to expect come next week. Uh, whether water temps are going to drop, whether clarity is going to uh, become murky again, or what. But I wish I had a few more days of this weather to be able to go out and try a couple of other spots where I know that I could catch them this time of year, where I haven't actually been yet this season, but had some good success last year. So far this year, I think I've only gone to like 5 or 6 different bodies of water. Matt says that kind of reminds me of a sort of same experience I had with someone. Nice. Well, guys, what else do you want to talk about? I've been just kind of blabbing, and I know that the comments are not rolling very much right now. Although I did miss two comments. Matt says that Z1 crank for Megabass is becoming a favorite. I I thought it was all right before, but I don't think I was using it right. It switched to grinding it on the rocks, and it's been catching them very well. Good to hear, man. I don't have any of the Z cranks, but always exciting to like figure out what the deal is with a specific bait, and not just how it's intended to be fished, but what works for you and your fish, how they want it. And so congrats on kind of figuring it out. Frank says, I caught a pumpkin seed on a buzz bait while pike fishing 2 nights ago. Sheesh, poor little guy impaled himself right through the head when he swiped at it. Oh no, in one eye and out the other. Oh, that sounds brutal. Yikes. Did you take him home or did you let him go? I might have just kept it and ate him. Unless he was little. Matt says those are some nice bluegills. Yeah, thanks, man. I have caught a lot of nice bluegills in the last week or so. Probably a half a dozen between 6 and 8 inches, and all really beautiful fish. Daniel says we were enjoying the pics in the story. Okay, well, no problem, man. I'm glad that I could share a little bit with you guys about my own fishing adventures. Show you guys some of the fish that I've caught this past week. I wish that I had been able to do the same uh, last week, or maybe it was the week before, when telling you guys the story about my fly fishing excursion. And I honestly don't remember just how much I shared with you guys about that, but all of the evidence is on GoPro footage. I did not take any cell phone pictures that day, but like I told you guys, I whacked them good, caught probably 50 or more fish in like a 6 hour day of fly fishing. That was a day to remember for sure. Bruce says oil burner just kicked in. Yeah, no, it's my water heater. I'm not sure why it's running. Matt says the Z crank casts very well for its size because it's got that LBO weight transfer system. And when grinding on the rocks, it hunts like crazy. Okay. Bruce says I picked up 2 carrot sticks, one spinning and one bait caster. Okay. I don't know what 2 carrot sticks are, but good to hear that you picked up a couple new rods, man. Frank says our regulations say that you have to keep everything fit for human consumption that won't survive the release. But an animal made off with it while I was fishing another spot on shore. Really? Okay, so you were gonna keep it. You had left it up on the bank, and then you're fishing, and another animal came and jacked it from you. That's pretty hilarious. Uh, I suppose that's not the worst thing to happen, right? They probably needed it more than you did. So, right on. But yeah, I probably would have done the same and kept it. Those are good regulations in my book. I don't know if we've got regulations with that specific of wording here in Colorado, but that's kind of the humane and logical thing to do in that situation. If you know that a fish is not going to survive, you ought not release it. Seems like common sense to me. Matt says, I haven't heard of carrot sticks since like 2011. I remember having one. It was a great rod, just very fragile, and guides were super small. Okay. Yeah, carrot sticks, as far as I know, were ducket before a rename, says Bruce. I don't know what to tell you. Perhaps I wasn't into bass fishing when they were a big thing or a little bit more known, but I don't really know anything about them. I know ugly stick. I I started out with an ugly stick like 6 years ago. I still have it. Um, in fact, it could be down here if you guys want to see it. That thing will freaking never break. Is it here? Yes. Yes. Baba Booey. I haven't fished this thing in like 3 or 4 years. It is it's a heavy rod. So it's got that, you know, full grip, but it's not a long grip. And it's like a 6'6" medium. So it's got a lot of tip on it, but it's got a really strong backbone. And I remember this thing doing fairly well for me. Not a sensitive rod. As I said, super, super heavy. Um, but it was my first bait caster. Had it paired up with this Piscifun, PC Fun, whatever you want to call it. Um, Now I can talk normal volume because that water heater just kicked back off. Thank the Lord. But yeah, the PC Fun Torrent. This is like a 40 or $50 reel that you can get on Amazon and other places. But yeah, this reel actually over the course of time has surprised me and performs better than I would have thought. It's got really long, like 100 or 110 millimeter grips on this thing. So, as I said, I haven't used this combo in at least a few years, but when this is what I used, it did me well. Hey, you say yours was carbon fiber. No, it was fiberglass. Well, I don't know what the deal is. Can someone explain why the tips of these things are clear? Um, I have no idea like what the reason is for that, but ugly stick, shout out. Matt says they were a thing when those yellow skeet Reese rods were a thing as well. Okay. Bruce's second rod was an ugly stick back in the 90s when they were sold with pen reels. Nice. Daniel, I have used my Air-X rod, um, and so far so good. I haven't been using it a ton. I still use my Lew's TP1 Black rods the most. Yeah, I would say that TP1 Black 7.2 medium heavy is just kind of like my workhorse, and so that Aired X is almost like a backup to it. If I knew I was going to be throwing um, moving baits a lot, if I wanted to dedicate one rod to say uh, jigs and Texas rigs, things like that are needing a little bit more uh, s- slow movement, and then maybe also have one that's a little bit more for swim jigs or swim baits or chatter baits or heavier crankbaits, things like that. Um, then yeah, that's the situation where I will use it. I've got it paired up with my Shimano Corrado and like 15-pound line, and so far so good. Uh, it feels really nice in the hand, and for the sake of me giving you a little bit more informed uh, opinions on it, I ought to just make a point to take it out more. So I apologize for not being able to give like a full blown review for it just yet because fishing hasn't gotten real good for me until say just a couple weeks ago, and I've only been bringing out a couple of combos with me every time. And so I've only fished with it maybe 4 or 5 times so far and caught a handful of fish on it. That's it. So couldn't quite tell you yet. You say it's a good rod for the money. I've used mine some. Only thing I don't like is the tiny eye on the tip. Yeah, and I noticed that right away as well. So that's why I'm not running braid to a leader on it. So I'm just running straight fluorocarbon. And I've found with those types of situations, um, with rods with micro guides or with small eyes like that, then I will just use straight fluorocarbon like the vast majority of the time. Matt says saltwater ugly sticks are actually really good rods. Pretty much will last your whole life. Yeah, no, you're right about that, man. Bruce says the guy I got the carrots from had a stack of skeet reefs and the older orange lightning rods. Interesting. That dude was loaded up on budget rods, huh? Trying to trade some stuff for an SLX DC with a guy, and then I need to clean house and pick up a few air decks. Fair enough. Trying to trade and upgrade, my man. Not a bad idea. So, what else do you guys want to talk about tonight? I've got a little bit more time on my hands. Conversation is going fairly well. We've been on for an hour and 2 minutes. So, uh, let me just take a quick little check. Nope, the Avs game is over and we lost 4-1. That freaking sucks. Um, so I am not in a rush to go anywhere other than perhaps to get myself like a glass of water in a moment. Um, so if you guys want to hang out for a moment while I go get a glass of water, I'll be right back and we can kind of open this um, up fairly wide. Think about one or two things that you guys want to talk about. Um, and it could be about things that I've been doing recently or things that you've been doing. As I told you, I've been having a lot more success on soft plastics, um, specifically throwing some weightless baits, some drop shots, and some Ned rigs this week. But that's given the conditions that I'm working with at some of the places, the ponds and lakes that I'm fishing, where there is a lot of weed growth and that I've had to deal with. So, knowing that the fish are biting more aggressively and that the grass has grown up, then I will probably start to play around a little bit more with a few other presentations, like a shallow diving jerk bait, like the Lucky Craft Slender Pointer that I picked up not that long ago, like the Lucky Craft BDS Magic 2.2. Probably throw lipless crankbaits a little bit more, and weedless swim baits, of course. Super excited to get into throwing this guy, especially as the fish are super territorial with the spawn. So, uh, come up with a question or two, or a comment or two, and I'll be back in 1 minute. Are you guys enjoying that clicking in the background? Hope you're liking it. Sorry about the absence. I also need to throw this little baby guy, the Fritzside 5 Junior. There's a lot of baits that I just need to organize and plan out to use more frequently. Bruce says budget rods have come a long way since I was a kid. That is for damn sure. Isn't the TP one like 60 or 70 bucks? Um, no, I want to say it's like 120 bucks, but for some reason they're hard to find these days because it was originally made to be a combo, like the do they call it the TP1 Black combo, or do they call it something else? I'm not 100% sure, but um, there was a short period of time where you could find them individually, and Discount Tackle brought in a shipment of the rods, and I picked up two of them when they did. So, yeah, I've liked both the reels and the rods. Um, I think I've got two of each. I had three of the reels, and it wasn't really using one of them at all. I don't think it even touched the water, and I sold that to Daniel, I think. Bruce says I run big game on most of my rods. Okay, fair enough. You know that is old school, but to each his own. And there's nothing wrong with Berkeley big game. I don't throw monofilament really all that frequently, especially straight mono. I have like one setup that has straight mono on it, and I rarely use it. I'll throw mono as a leader depending on the situation, um, but I still throw fluorocarbon um, a majority of the time, and then braid. And usually it's either straight braid or braid to fluoro. If Bruce says, I don't know about mono on spinning, line twist sucks. That is for damn sure. Matt says, Tyler, did you see that new cube JDM bait from the hookup? What are your thoughts on it? I did, and it's hard to have any thoughts on it, dude. I mean, so the hookup tackle just released a soft plastic cube with uh, some tentacles coming off on all sides of the bait, and I I have no words for it. You know, it's definitely a freakish type of bait. You throw it just because, and specifically where you know that fish are going to eat kind of whatever. So that doesn't necessarily appeal to me because I I like to be a little bit more strategic about my fishing and throw baits that I know have a slightly higher likelihood of catching fish. And that seems just like one that you'd throw for the sake of screwing around. Um, but yeah, that's right up the alley of Griff from the hookup. In fact, I think that's what he's been doing, and he's been catching them on it. But I think the argument could be made that that he'd be catching them on anything that he'd be using in that same situation. So I have no interest in that bait. I will say that much. Bruce says more backlash with fluoro than anything. Braid on my pitching and flipping and frog rod. Yeah, I think most people would agree with that. Um, Frog rod, flipping and pitching. you might as well just be throwing like a straight 65-pound braid. Some people like to go a little bit lighter than that, maybe as light as 40 or 50 pound, but I typically don't. I have broken plenty of 40-pound braid. I haven't broken a lot of 50-pound, but I find that that casting distance is not as much of a factor in those situations, and so you might as well step it up. Uh, Now, I've also heard of people going the opposite direction and going with 80-pound braid, and I personally have never done that. Haven't ever broken 65-pound braid, so don't see a real reason to do that. Matt says if you use light enough braid, you don't even need a leader. Like 8 pound or 6 pound braid is super thin. Some pros use it straight, no problem. Yeah, the only issue is just the the color of the braid that you're using. So if you're using moss green, uh, or maybe even white, I think you can get away with it. But if you're throwing red braid, if you're throwing uh, yellow braid, you're probably best to throw a leader just for the sake of the fish not seeing the line. But we could talk about that all day long and whether you believe in the fish seeing the line, um, and what they get spooked from or about, rather. So, yeah, that's all personal opinion and preference, really. Adam says, I've been doing braid to leader, but my uni to uni knots seem to keep snapping whenever I get hung up. Well, then you probably ought to switch up your connection knot or just kind of relearn it and and be a little bit more careful when tying that connection knot. Bruce says Googan green rods are pretty nice. The handle at the reel is a little small for me though. Okay. Yeah, I've never seen or held one of those rods in person, the green or the gold. Daniel says, do straight braid over mono for spinning. Yep, 100% agree with that. The uni to uni will usually break if you get in snags, but maybe try the GT knot. I usually break at the lure when I break off snags, but the line is usually still not going to be good from stretching it. Yeah, you're right about that, Matt. Usually, if you're breaking off, like breaking a snag off, you're going to have to probably cut your line 10 feet up, regardless, just because you're going to get damage to the line, not just from fraying, but from the stretch as well. Bruce said, I said the hell with leaders on my spinning, had a uni snap 4 feet from the bank, lost what would have been my PB. That's brutal. Bruce says, I got the Googan with the Corrado DC, dirt cheap, couldn't pass it up, $160, well spent. Yeah, that is good money. Um, Money well spent. I'll say that. Yeah, Corrado DC for $160 would be a good deal. So you pretty much got that Googan rod for free after getting a good deal on a reel. So nice, man. Matt says GT is a good knot. Use it for all my leader connections. Yeah, the GT knot I think is a less familiar knot, but worth looking into. Daniel says, I don't know if red bothers them or not. I put that Roxani on the aired X and um, took off the leader because of the micro guide, and it was still catching them on the jackhammer. Um, the first red braid that you've had, though. Okay, yeah, the Roxani is a nice reel. I think I sent it to Daniel with 50-pound red braid on there, if I'm not mistaken. And I like it. Um, Although with that micro guide, I I do prefer straight fluorocarbon to straight braid when it comes to small guides. Yeah, I know that what's more important is the liner, the inserts of the guides, but I've had more issues with guides, um, and specifically small guides being a problem when I'm throwing straight braid or braid to a leader than when I'm throwing just straight fluoro. And so whenever I have a rod that has small guides, I'm like straight fluoro. Uh, it's a paranoia thing more than anything because I'm not trying to replace my rods left and right. So I've got certain ones dedicated to certain techniques, but Daniel says, "I'll keep it on that rod. I'll switch it to fluoro." Yeah, makes sense. Um, and who knows? I mean, you could reuse that braid too. It's not like I just spooled that up and then maybe casted it a couple of times, if that. That reel was like in mint condition, so I don't think I ever legitimately used it, put any stress on it, but um, I spooled it up. That should be a new spool of line. So theoretically, you could just, uh, reverse load up another reel with that same braid and have zero issues with it as opposed to wasting the braid. But doesn't really matter either way. Matt says, found it from some striper fisherman. Okay, the GT knot. They seemed pretty serious about it. Most saltwater guys use the FG knot, but they seemed pretty confident in it. So I tried it. Worked really well for how simple it is. Good to know. I think maybe we all ought to look into the GT knot, perhaps, especially if you're not confident in your leader knots already. But I rarely have issues, and I'm pretty good about retying. Uh, Especially my connection knots when my leader is getting a little wonky, or if I've gotten snagged, or if that leader is getting shorter and shorter over uh, a period of time, then I just I tie on new leaders pretty frequently. Bruce says the FG is a pain in the left testicle. I gave up. Yeah, I agree with that. There was like a year, maybe 2 years, where I was pretty serious about learning it. And I did learn it and I got the hang of it, had kind of my own strategy of tying it where I would keep the line taut in between my feet and I think my teeth. Um, and I could tie the whole thing in, I don't know, 90 seconds or something like that. And tie it cleanly like 80 to 90% of the time. It's just it's annoying when it's that technical of a knot. It takes that long to tie, and then there's still the opportunity for it to not be quite right. All of those wraps, when you cinch it down, they can sometimes go over each other, and then you have to try and straighten it out, fix it back up, and sometimes you can't. And so that can be really annoying if you can't get it just right. Adam says, any suggestions on a fanny pack for bank fishing? I just want to carry some plastics, hooks, weights, etc., but don't always want a backpack. Um, that's funny. A fanny pack. I'm sure Matt has a suggestion or two because I know that the hookup tackle carries some stuff like that from some JDM companies, but um, no, man, I'm not up on the fanny pack game. I just have varying sizes of backpacks, but Bruce makes a good point there that fly fishing bags wouldn't be a bad option. I know that uh, some fly fishing companies make like slings, uh, or even borderline fanny packs that could work. So that's a good suggestion, Bruce. So look into Sims might be a little bit expensive. I'm not sure exactly what you're looking to spend, but yeah, something along the lines of a sling um, would probably do you best. But I get that a backpack can sometimes be hot during the summer, and you might prefer to just have something on you. Like if I'm in that sort of mode, I'm just wearing shorts that have, multiple pockets that are relatively large. And then what I'll do is I'll have one or two of these boxes loaded up with terminal tackle. And these things are small enough to easily fit inside my pockets, right? You can't even tell. And they'll go in any one of my pockets with no issue. And so I can fit one or two of these. I can fit a pair of pliers, and then I can fit maybe a half a dozen packs of soft plastics in my pockets and just be on the go with, one or two setups and just be on the move, be mobile, and not have to worry about carrying an entire bag worth of stuff. But I get your point, and I'm sorry I don't really have any great recommendations on that. Matt says, "Yeah, that's why I get my stuff done at a shop because they just um, backspool my reels, reverse the line, add some more extra backing, and I got a brand new spool pretty quick." Yeah, I know you've mentioned that before. How you like to get your reels spooled up at the shop, um, and to each their own. Daniel says, I like the FG, or I think the FG works best on large line, like Matt said, for saltwater guys. Could be, but I know the FG is still a very popular knot, especially among pro fishermen in the bass fishing community. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's a like saltwater specific type of knot, but Matt says, Adam, get a hip bag. I have one, works really good, carries enough lures for what you need. Okay, so what kind of hip bag are you talking about? Bruce says the closest shop to me is 45 minutes. Hell, Walmart is 20 minutes. Dang. Yeah. That's why shopping online these days is so crucial. Of course, there's going to be a lot of situations where you actually want to go in person and be able to see or feel uh, what certain products are like. But in this day and age, you can get anything shipped to your door, and most return policies are better than they ever used to be in the past. So, even if you were to order a sling or a fanny pack, a hip bag, whatever, and you get it in person, and you don't like the way that it feels or fits or the storage that you've got in it. Usually, it's pretty straightforward to be able to send it back. You might have to pay, return shipping sometimes, but usually there would be a return label in the package that you're getting. Bruce is in a small town, one traffic light, four windows, fart at one end of town. You can still smell it at the other end of town. Uh, that's hilarious. Sounds like a tiny town. Guys, I feel bad. I don't have much of an agenda tonight, um, or an opinion of what to talk about right now. Is anything on your guys' mind at the moment? Because I'm a little bit scatterbrained and didn't come in here with much of an idea of what to talk about. Just wanted to show you this new swim bait. and talk about some of my fishing adventures from the week. We've been on for an hour and 25 minutes, and I don't want to feel like I'm wasting anybody's time. And I know you guys probably don't think that necessarily, but it's hard as the host to not feel like that from time to time when we've got kind of these dead silence. Um, but Matt says, I've got the swim bait underground one, but I can carry 3 lunch boxes, 5 clamshells, a scale, 2 spools of line, bunch of jigs, snaps, pliers, and accessory attachments to put swim baits in. That sounds like you've got a lot of room in that thing, dude. That's wild. Also, a small terminal tackle attachment that a hook wallet would easily fit into, and some compact things. Dang. Yo. Bruce says, what is your favorite Ned rig bait? Oh, that's a heavy hitting question, dude. Uh, wow. Favorite Ned rig bait. Um, so obviously, this week I've been having a tremendous amount of success on the Molex Flex stick. And last year I had a lot of success on it too. So that bait has jumped way up my list of Ned rig soft plastic baits. Uh, for a few reasons. It is a traditional stick bait, but it is tapered, so it's fat and has some ribbing on the bottom, like the first half of the bait, and then it tapers to a really thin, pointed tail at the top, and the top half of the bait is thinner and has this ribbing on it. It's a really, really cool bait, and it's super buoyant. It's made from an elastomer style soft plastic, and it comes scented. And look, all of those things about it are awesome, and it's a relatively affordable soft plastic bait. Packaging is great. I love everything about it, but uh, I've played around so much in the Ned rig category over the last handful of years that it is so hard to pinpoint my favorite Ned rig bait, if you will. Another one that has really, really impressed me over the last 2 seasons has been the Zoom Beatdown. I did not expect to like that bait as much as I do, and it's because I really like the versatility of it. It's a slightly longer profile bait at 3.5 inches long, and it's relatively straight. It has a little bit of taper on the tail, but not nearly like that Molex Flex stick does. And it looks like a do nothing bait, but it's got a really good neutral buoyancy to it. So it the Molex Flex Stick will stand straight up like a Z-Man Finesse TRD, but it's got a lot more action to it. It has scent to it, and it's just as durable as the Z-Man baits. So, um, I really really like that Molex bait, but the Zoom Beatdown, if you trim about a half inch and make it more like 3 inches, it's an awesome Ned rig bait. Uh, it has this slow fall to it. So when you hop it, it will stand up for a second and then slowly fall down. Whereas a lot of really heavily scented baits, they don't ever want to stand up. They hit and they fall down, hit and fall down, or they just drag. They have a really unappealing action to them. But there's something about Zoom soft plastics and the minimal salt content in them that lends well to durability and a unique buoyancy to those baits. So, uh, really like the Zoom Beatdown. And then of course there's a handful by Z-Man that I like. And the Savage Gear baits I've been really impressed by. Um, I threw the Ned Salamander a fair amount last year, but it's not a great Ned rig bait. It's a better uh, drop shot bait than anything else. And let's see here. I do have the Zoom beat down here that I could show you. So this is what she looks like. This is like the same thickness as like a 4-inch Senko. So it's a little skinnier than a traditional stick bait. And you see that slight taper to the nose. So if I'm rigging this on a Ned rig, I'll trim about half or 3/4 of an inch off of it. Or because it's 3.5 inches, it has just enough body to where you can rig this thing on a wacky rig on a drop shot, and it has deadly action. It's got that slow fall, almost reminds me of like a Dinger. Um, I've never fished the Zoom Zlinky, which is essentially their Senko style bait, but I assume the salt content is different in it than in the beatdown. So the Zoom beatdown is one worth being on your radar for sure. And then a bait that I haven't tried yet, but am super excited to, is the Savage Gear Dragon Tail Slug in the Ned rig size. So 3-inch bait, uh, also made from an elastomer style plastic, and it's scented. So awesome little bait there. But a few other Ned rig baits that I throw a fair amount and like a lot. I would say historically, my favorite over the last like 4 or 5 seasons has been the X Zone Lures Ned Zone. So this is not a super durable bait, but it is a really good bait. Um, for having a traditional plastisol material, this thing is salt free and it's super buoyant. So it does stand straight up, and the taper on this thing is unique. So it has a more bulbous tail section on it, which adds to just a little bit more action. But it stands up really, really well, and it's soft and has a really good scent on it. So I do really, really recommend the Ned Zone by X Zone. One that's taken a little bit of getting used to for me, but I've kind of figured it out, is the missile baits Ned Bomb. Uh, this is not a bait that you want to throw all the time. It's very erratic. Um, doesn't stand up very well, and so when you hop it, the thing is all over the place. Most Ned rig baits, as you dead stick them, they're either going to lay down or they're going to stand up, right? This one lays down. When you drag it, it's not going to stand up. When you hop it, it's not just going to hop up and come towards you. It's going to hop up and jump to the side. This thing's all over the place. So the Ned Bomb is unique in that way. For when you've got perhaps multiple fish in the area and you're looking for a reaction bite and not necessarily a fish to wander over and inspect your bait and then react when you just pop it or move it once or twice. Um, Whereas like the opposite of that is going to be the Googan baits, Rattling Ned. This guy is just a turd in the water. Um, it's not a great bait, but that rattle as well as their scent, there's something to it. So I do still like it. It's just not my favorite. I've had some good success on it in years past. It's not durable, so I use it, but it's not my favorite. Um, I really like the Ned Fry from Sixth Sense. Kind of like the Zoom beatdown, this guy comes in a larger size. So it comes in a 4.5 inch size, and then I cut them down. And I cut them to Ned rig size, just shy of 3 inches. And what's cool about this bait is the profile. It has a flat bottom and a rounded top. And it's got all this ribbing on it. It's a fairly durable soft plastic and a rather buoyant one. So, um, not a super interesting bait, but really effective nonetheless. So, um, that's an underrated bait, and then one that is off of most people's radar, but should certainly be on their radar is the Yum Ned Dinger. I mean, it looks like nothing, right? Um, it comes in some really plain, natural colors, um, and it's not interesting, but it's super buoyant, really good Ned rig bait, and and perhaps the coolest feature is this air pocket in the tail. So just this last little 1/4 of an inch on top of the bait is hollow. And so you can load that up with scent, or like I've done here, and it makes it look a little funny, you can throw a rattle in there, and all of a sudden you've got a rattling Ned Dinger. So where that is really the selling point of the Googan baits, rattling Ned, you can throw a rattle into the nose of a Yum Ned Dinger, and it will still float even with the added weight of a rattle. And so uh, that bait is probably up there. If we're not talking about Z-Man baits, the top 3 or 4 for me are going to be those ones that I talked about. The Molex Flex Stick, the X Zone Lures Ned Zone, the Zoom Beatdown, and the Yum Ned Dinger are going to be all at the top of my list. Bruce says, I use lipless, mainly rattle traps in a shallow pond. Yeah, rattle trap is a good lipless crankbait to throw in a shallow pond, but I throw soft plastics in shallow ponds primarily. But I've found over the last year or two that using a wake bait in shallow pond uh, can be absolutely deadly, depending on the time of day that you're fishing, the time of year. But if it's early morning or it's late at night, a wake bait and a popper can be killer, killer, killer. You know, top water baits in general in a shallow pond are great options. Bruce bookmarked the Molex. Cool. Daniel says the Ned Zone looks like a small snakehead. Interesting. Never thought about that. I don't have snakeheads near me, but I know that they have that fat head on them. Matt says, "Have you tried any bigger swim baits yet, Tyler, like the Mag Draft or the Arashi?" Uh, I mean, I've definitely tried the mag draft. What do you mean by that? I haven't tried the 8-inch mag draft. Um, and when you say the Arashi, are you talking about the Arashi Glide or the Arashi Swimmer? I've tried them both. I just haven't been fishing them this season yet. I've thrown the mag draft some this year, not a tremendous amount. Yeah, so I mean, I've fished them all, just not yet this year. I've fished the mag draft this year. I've not fished the Arashi, either of the Arashi Glide or Swimmer yet this year. I've only thrown glide baits a couple of times, and I've pretty much thrown small glide baits, mostly to get the hang of them and just see what the action was like on those compared to the bigger ones. Um, I threw the Gantarelle and the Gantarelle Junior once or twice so far this year, but again, most of that was in earlier conditions when the water was colder, and I definitely ought to be throwing them more. So I appreciate that suggestion, man. Might want to try the Glide. Um, yeah, no, I like the Arashi Glide a lot. Um, I don't like the Arashi Swimmer very much. Uh, the way that it swims is just a little bit unnatural. Um, it kind of wants to swim up at an angle, so you have to swim it very slow, but at just the right retrieve speed, so that you're getting all those joints to do the work without it rising up too much. Whereas that Arashi Glide has an awesome action on it. I actually really do like it. I need to throw that slide swimmer. I need to throw the tiny clash. There's a lot of baits that I need to throw. All right, guys. It is Thursday night, and it's late. We've been on for an hour and 43 minutes. Um, I appreciate the conversation. I think I'm going to dip out of here. And Matt has left me with a lot to think about. Bruce, good question on the Ned rig. I appreciate it. So, guys, as I've mentioned multiple times over the course of this stream, now is an excellent time to be getting out fishing as much as you possibly can. Of course, for Chris, losing big fish, and I here in Colorado, the next 3 days, almost the next week, is going to be tough. Really cold weather. It's going to take some time for the weather to come back and for the fish to recover from that. So, for the rest of you guys, you've got hot weather, and I would recommend that you take advantage of that. Get out, do some morning fishing if you can, uh, or some like mid to late afternoon if you can. Um, enjoy the weather, wear some sunscreen, and whack some fish for me, because I'm going to be just thinking about it and wishing that I could be out over the next 3 days. I'll just be indoors hanging out with my kids, perhaps going sledding, if you can imagine that, on Saturday. Uh, so, guys, thank you very much for the support. If somehow one of you 11 in here are not one of the 13 people who have hit the thumbs up button, do that before you get out of here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. You have notifications turned on, and I will see you guys in the next video. Love you guys. Peace.